What I've got to do now is make a mould out of this rigid foam, shape that until I'm happy with it, glass it over and then pull that foam out and go from there. Okay, let's start here. We are going to make this mould 23 centimetres wide. Okay, so this is where I'm at. Now, doesn't quite look like the teaspoon. Looks more like a shoe or a clog, but I think it's going to look a lot better. I'm going to trim it down like that, get a slope going up like that, and I think that will make it look a lot better. Still a lot more sanding and shaping to go, but that's the idea. I'm just going to fill in this gap here. I've put some contact glue in there. Beautiful. All this has got to be rounded off. See how we go. Okay, so I've just put some black tape around the back to give the impression of what it'll look like when I cut the bottom up. Right, so this is where I'm at. What I've done is I've added this piece in here to get a nice smooth radius there. I think that's going to look better. I'm going to put a seat pan on here and make up a 3mm aluminium pan, and that will have the raised piece on the front to fill in the hole in the tank, and so the upholstery will come down and up the back, covering up that hole. I'm pretty close now. I've started to wrap this in this painter's tape. It's kind of a waxy finish, but I will put some release agent on it. I'll do 2 or 3 coats of that. As I said before, this will be trimmed up right up to about here. I won't do that until the last minute. It's nice to work with a flat surface. Tail lights are going in here. I've got some strip lights on order. They're not the LED flexible strips. They're actually just small LED lamps in a strip array. So I'll either have 2 or 3 of those because I want it nice and bright. Maybe have 1 or 2 that work as a tail light, and then the other one comes on as the brake light as well, and they'll all increase in brightness when the brake light goes on. Oh, let me just show you one other thing. Yeah, so here we have Lola, the workshop dog. Hey? She hangs out all day here with me under the bench in her little nest. Hey? Good girl. You want to go to the park, Lols? Huh? Do you? We'll go in a minute, okay. Okay, here we go. I've got this set up on a stand, just makes it easier, and a box to catch the drips. I mixed up some epoxy. I use these cheapo brushes, throw away. They're about $1 each. I start by giving the whole thing a coat. I've got some pieces of fiberglass already cut roughly to shape, size. I like to use epoxy resin. It's a bit more expensive, I believe. It's also a bit stronger. It's very easy to mix. It's just a straight 2-to-1 ratio. But one of the biggest advantages, in my opinion, is the lack of odour in comparison to vinyl ester or polyester resins. Boy, those resins put off some nasty fumes. You'll definitely lose a few IQ points breathing in that stuff. Cut some small pieces to go around these very tight bends where the fiberglass is sitting up. You can correct anything sticking up with the sanding you do in between each coat, but this helps ensure you actually got glass coverage around that very tight bend there. Take another one. Okay, so I'll let that dry and then I'll put on another coat, I think, of the thicker weave, and then I'll pull the mould out. So this epoxy's now gone off overnight, nice and hard. I've trimmed around the edges here roughly. I'm just going to take off all the high spots, anything sticking up, so that the next layer of glass sits as close as possible to the mould. You always get these little sharp bits around the edges and corners and stuff, so that you sand that off, and also just scratch up the whole surface so that the next layer sticks on as best as possible. So I'll get started on that. Okay, here we go with the next layer. So I'll mix up some epoxy here. And just going to again coat the whole thing. so what I've done here is I've done 2 layers. I put in a patch like that, so up the front here, and I put one across the back, and then I've glassed over the whole lot again. You want to get this, you want to get particularly this part here, perhaps around there, very strong. That's going to be bolted down to your subframe, and that's going to take your ass and all the weight. This part back here, there's nothing structural in it, it's just covering up your back of your subframe, whatever you've got inside it. So that doesn't need to be that strong. Probably won't do any real more layers on this end, but I will keep strengthening this with probably 2 more layers. I'll probably do 1 layer of even coarser weave. This was coarser weave than the first layer. It's still fairly fine though, and it stretches and moulds over corners quite well. The thicker stuff doesn't do that so good. Okay, here we go with the 4th layer. I'm going to use the thickest weave I've got. I realised up until now I've been calling this foam plug a mould. It's actually a plug, to be technically correct. If you were using a mould, you can pretty much put all the glass on just about at once, because you start off with the finished surface inside the mould and you build up from there, so you don't have to be too precious about, you know, bumps and what have you, because the actual first layer you put on is going to be the finished surface. Doing it this way, when you're glassing over a plug, you have to be a bit more careful, because the finished surface is the last layer you put on. So any bumps and what have you, misalignment you do on the bottom layers gets amplified unless you sand it down as you go and try and retain the mould shape as you get to that last layer. Now you could just whack it all on and then spend hours shaping it again. This just ensures it's more true, more symmetrical. All that hard work you've done on the plug gets carried through to the end. Anyway, I'll start doing this. I won't bore you with the whole thing, but we'll get going here. Okay, it's the next morning. The epoxy's gone off good and hard. I've trimmed all the excess off the bottom. I'm going to leave the foam in. It's just easier to manage, easier to sand. Got a whole bunch of sanding to do right now, so I'll get started on that. I'll go for a bit of loan protection. Alright, here we go again. Next layer. up next morning. I gave this an extra coat of epoxy just to get a nice finish I can sand into. It came out absolutely beautiful here. Still needs a fair bit of work. I've trimmed off all the excess on the bottom using a cutting disc and a flapper disc to get it hard up against the foam. It's come out about 4 to 5 millimeters, I think, thick. If you're using chopped strand, you probably want to go a bit thicker. The weave is stronger than the chopped strand. Right, so I'll get this sanded off and then we'll pull the foam out and see how we go. So it's all sanded down now. It's come out pretty damn nice. It's just got a few little marks and stuff to fill in, but I'm really happy with that. You could almost paint that right as it is. Anyway, it's time now to pull out the plug. Now this is going to be entertainment. How good is that? Hey? Brilliant. Awesome. Rock solid. Still plenty lightweight. Love it. Yeah, so this has come out even better than I expected. It won't take much finishing at all to get this done. Beautiful. Really happy with that. Just need to trim it up like this now. When I get the light, I'll cut slots in there. I'll have to do some extra glass work in the back here to mount those lights. Got to make some supports. Sweet.